Woo! All right. I know this is an interesting distance to navigate, but we're going to be spending most of our dialogue over on that half of the room, so you all chose a good seat. I'm Dr. Jill Creighton. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I'm Associate Vice President in the Division of Student Affairs and your Dean of Students. Happy to be talking to you today about the history of religious holidays here at WSU. Have an amazing panel to help us with our discussion today. First, we have Mark O. English. Hello, Mark. And Mark is the university archivist and has now been helping researchers explore the university's history for nearly 20 years. He's written on the university's early days and regularly shares the history of our campus, its mascots, and its traditions in classes, papers, presentations, classes, and the media. His presentation on student protests at WSU in a previous public square was the inspiration for today's topic. Our second panelist is Sylvia Bullock. Hello, Sylvia.
Hi.
Sylvia is raised in Petersburg, Virginia, and she graduated from the University of Delaware with a degree in international relations and political science with a concentration in global studies. Active in leadership roles as a student at Delaware, Sylvia continued to bring people together from various backgrounds in her professional career, from working in admissions for her alma mater to creating and growing a multi-faith social justice program at Stony Point Center in New York State, to advising Black Women's Caucus and serving as a member of the Black Faculty and Staff Association, and working as an advisor for the Office of Multicultural Student Services right here at WSU. She also hosts an amazing podcast, Shea Butter FC, which offers two Black women's perspectives on soccer. So if you're a soccer fan, check that one out.
I cuss a lot, I'm sorry.
And our final panelist is Dr. Mayor Gilmore. Hello, Amir. With an undergraduate degree in history and a graduate degree in Africana Studies from SUNY Albany, and a PhD in cultural studies and social thought and education from here at WSU, Amir's interdisciplinary background allows him to traverse the boundaries across the social sciences, the arts, and the humanities. His interests in Black critical theory and Black masculinities and ground his scholarship on Black boy joy, and he is well versed in areas such as critical race theory, feminisms, and social theory. His vision and scholarship make critical contributions to the fields of Black studies and education, as well as connects to larger discussions of Afrofuturism and Black aesthetics. So that is our panel today. So the way that this is going to work is each of them is going to make a brief presentation. Mark is going to start with a PowerPoint, and then everything else will be dialogue-based. So again, if you're sitting on this side of the room, you're in good shape for our dialogue today. We'll be doing a bit of a moderated Q&A, and then we'll be saving time for your questions at the end. So if you have questions, please make sure that you make a note of them in your phone or write them down, and we'll be able to come around to you. I'd love to know who is here because this topic is just super fascinating to you.
It's okay.
Couple?
Okay.
Okay.
And who is here because one of your professors said you should probably be here? Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad to see that you're here today, and we're going to get started. Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you for your presentation.
This is a little off balance. Everybody's on that side of the room, and the stuff is over here. Let's see. So I'm not standing over here. They asked me to briefly kind of give an overview of the history of the holidays, how they've been observed here at WSU. The problem is I've got less than 10 minutes here probably, and I start putting together a list of holidays. I can hit 30 pretty fast, and you do the math, that's 20 seconds a holiday for 130 years of university history. I'm really going to hit some highlights here and talk pretty fast. The holiday that I love seeing the history of most here, I think, is probably Thanksgiving, because it's one of the best exemplars of the way kind of our community on campus has changed. If you go back to 1911, these are a couple of photographs. Upper left is Thanksgiving dinner for the men in Ferry Hall, the men's dorm that year. Lower left, lower right is Stevens Hall, the Thanksgiving dinner for the women. And if you picture Thanksgiving in 1911, if you're here on campus, the only way to get back to your hometown is train, if you're lucky, if it goes there, but probably horse and wagon otherwise, because nobody has cars. So you get Thanksgiving off in 1911. That's it. You don't get the rest of the week off. You don't get Friday off. And because we know you're here on campus, we put together events, and all the men get together, have dinner together. All the women get together, have dinner together. We'd have football games on Thanksgiving Day. Here's Whitman College coming up and playing in 1908. Actually, UW played here most years. We'd have our annual UW Apple Cup, before it was called the Apple Cup. And everybody would be here for it. I mean, today, they changed it about 8 or 9 years ago. We started having the Apple Cup on the Friday after Thanksgiving every year, which kind of sucks because today you have a full week off and you all go home, and a lot of you aren't here when the Apple Cup is actually in Pullman anymore. But back then, they really were all there, and we'd have these events for students going on. There we go. It changed a little bit in 1937. This is a petition that I have over in the archives. It's followed by 42 pages of signatures of students. And the petition basically starts, "We, the undersigned students of the State College of Washington," they're writing the president of the university, and they say, "Can we have Friday off for Thanksgiving?" By 1937, people had cars. Some of them, they had access. They could get rides. If they left on Wednesday afternoon, many of them couldn't make it home to have Thanksgiving with their families and come back on Sunday. So the first time students really got to go back to their families is because some of the students got together, put together this petition and wrote the university president and said, "Can we change this?" And they did. It took another 30 or 40 years before you slowly started getting the rest of the week off. I don't know exactly when that happened, but I can track it in like 1960. It starts Wednesday at lunch, and by 1970, you get Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. But again, it was the students starting this that got it to go that way. When I was starting to put together this talk, at this point I was going to move to Christmas because Christmas is a logical transition. And this caught my eye. Respectfully submitted, Chris Rumberg, president of the ASSCW, now ASWSU. That's Chris on the right. And the reason this changed my order of holidays is because I know of Chris Rumberg, because on Christmas Eve 1944, he was on a U.S. military ship in the English Channel when it was hit by a German U-boat and sunk. There are stories of Chris Rumberg got out of the ship immediately, went back in to rescue another soldier, went back in to rescue another soldier, and kept doing this until he was literally so exhausted he fell into the English Channel, couldn't hold on to the raft, and drowned. The reason that's part of my holiday thing is because of Memorial Day. This takes me right to that. Back 1949, 1948, 1950, Memorial Day is a big deal here on campus. Today, Memorial Day, Veterans Day are holidays, and forgive me, I think most people, myself included, think of it as it's a day off. I'm going to go out and celebrate. Here, people go down to the beach. I hate to phrase this as that's a nice thing, because it's not. We should honor those lost in the war, those who served in the war. But the reason it's nice is because even my generation, much less your generation, I'm betting the odds are none of us here know anybody that we've lost in a war. We might, but the odds are pretty good none of us do. If you go back to 1949, 1950, every one of these students, if you were here as a student at campus, you knew people, family members, friends you grew up with. These holidays are very significant events on campus and meant a lot to people here because it's a chance we got to remember these people. There are other holidays, of course, on campus that we do still treat seriously today. And I think it's mid-90s, Martin Luther King became a holiday, Martin Luther King Day. I don't know how much we still have marches today. Last year really messed up a lot of our campus traditions because none of us were here to do anything in person. And there's almost like a fresh start. I'm curious to see how some of these things are going to evolve with you guys now that you don't have what we've always done to cue you. But we have had marches here fairly regularly, as you can see there. The university has a habit of bringing in significant speakers. There's Angela Davis being here in 2015. Other events going on here on campus. So we do treat some of the more serious holidays fairly seriously. But we always love to focus on the fun holidays. I'm a big fan of that photo, of that type of photo, when we used to have a big Christmas tree out there on the Holland Library lawn between us and the clock tower there. Something else, I don't know when they stopped doing that or why they stopped doing it, but unfortunately we don't see that as much. Christmas used to be huge here on campus. We weren't here, of course. That's the problem with many of these holidays. People ask me occasionally, 4th of July photos of students celebrating. You're all gone. No, there are no 4th of July photos of students celebrating. It's going to be one of the problems with Juneteenth when we talk about that. But even leading up into Christmas, we would see all these events going on. People out caroling at the upper left, students putting on a show for other students upper right. That Santa Claus is a student, and the crowd is elementary school students who've come up here to be entertained by the WSU students. And this has faded a lot these days, I think, and a lot of that is just the change in our society. You guys today are not forced to form the same sense of community on this campus because you're still in connection with your high school friends, your families. You could all jump on the internet right now and be Zooming with your high school friends in about 20 seconds. If you were here in the 1950s, don't even have much in the way of television to entertain you. So we really had this sense of community. It also helps that the campus was a lot smaller. There's 15,000 of you on here now. I don't know how many of those you actually know individually. But we really see kind of these holidays illustrating a little bit of how our community has changed. One of my favorites is this Halloween 1965 out on the Holland Library when peanuts were kind of a new thing. They held a great pumpkin rally and they got together and they sang pumpkin carols out on the Holland Library lawn. It's like, I kind of love the idea. It's kind of goofy. Peanuts were kind of a new thing there. I don't even know if the cartoon was out, but I love this type of celebration going on here on campus. April Fool's Day, somebody at one point in time in 1979 rappelled down off the roof of the Holland Library. I don't know how they got in there, and if you've ever wondered what the guy up on the side of the Holland Library is reading, they went ahead and spray painted that on the side of it there. He's got a little Playboy bunny on the side of his book. Don't see much in the way of April Fool's stuff going on, probably because that cost a lot of money to clean, and somebody would have gotten serious trouble, but I love that. And, oh yeah, one of my favorites. Anybody here have seen this, hooray, hooray for the 8th of May? If you Google this online, this is a holiday that we are credited with starting here at Washington State University in 1960. This is our own homegrown holiday, and it is occasionally celebrated nationally. I've never witnessed it being celebrated myself, I'm happy to say. It's abbreviated NOID there, and the correct phrase is something like, hooray, hooray for the 8th of May. It's National Outdoor Intercourse Day. There is a holiday called Outdoor Sex Day, which is credited with being started at WSU in 1916, if you Google it, 1960, 60, if you Google that online. Isn't that the oddest thing? Yes, our contribution to holidays. I said there's a ton of holidays on there that I couldn't afford to hit because I don't have time here. The one I want to close with is, of all things, Guy Fawkes Day. I don't know how many of you know who Guy Fawkes is. Really, if you've seen V for Vendetta, the 2005 movie, the guy with the mask who's going to go and blow up Parliament. Basically, and I think it's 1605, I'm not a history major, forgive me. Someone did try to blow up Parliament, was stopped, and there's a holiday in England after him called Guy Fawkes Day. On November 5th, 2010, if you went into any of your classrooms here on campus that have like the nice electronic screens that roll down and that are controlled from a central point of view, someone hacked into those, and at the start of every class period, you got a little 3-minute talk from Guy Fawkes. It's on YouTube, you can find it. Honestly, it's a little crazy, a little disjointed. He's calling people squirrels, but he has a web page that he puts up that's now long gone, and he has a nice call out to the students. Here's your call to action. Students, stop being so apathetic. When you hear or see something that troubles you, make your opinion known, do something about it. Don't just sit around and play video games, check your Facebook status. I've always kind of loved that someone hacked in to make a call to student activism on Guy Fawkes Day here in 2010. That's not something you would think you would see here at WSU. In any case, that's my brief introduction to holidays here. I'm going to turn it over to whoever's next, and I don't know what to do about the screen at this point because I don't know if you guys want that following you. Oh.
Let's put this back to the
intro.
That one's good, I think. Thank you, Mark, for the setup. I will give you a fair warning and heads up. Please do not observe the 8th of May. That's not going to go well for you here or with, the law. So that's important. Please don't do that. So I'm going to turn it over now to Sylvia Bullock to make some remarks.
Oh, it's on. Okay. Am I just talking about what holidays at WSU mean to me? Time off is usually what it means to me as a staff member. I do appreciate a good paid holiday. So thanks for our bargaining unit for that. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the day is. I know you all mentioned Juneteenth, which officially became a federal holiday this past June, past June. I know Governor Inslee passed that as law. So I'd be interested to see what WSU is going to do in the future. I know that there was a statement put out by the president's office. A little issue with that, in that nobody that actually looks like the people who celebrate Juneteenth was involved in that. But so hopefully we'll be able to improve upon that in the future. But I always quite like the holidays. The week before we get back from the holidays, it's always a rush. But yeah, I just think it's time off, it's time to reflect, it's time to build community as much as possible. I know Halloween's a fun time for our students. Please don't combine Noid and Halloween. That seems like a bad idea. I really am fascinated by that holiday. Sorry. In 1916, that's, yeah, wow.
60.
Oh, whew, okay. I was like, that's a very, I mean, not that it's better, but I was like, oh no, Grandma, what are you doing? But yeah, I don't know. I just always think of time off or days off where you're not in class or whatever as a time of hopefully reflection and rest. I think particularly coming out of a pandemic, right? Taking those moments that are given to you to just rest, take care of your mental health, take care of yourself. And on important holidays, reflect on the why of it all. I know as a unit, we try to do that, particularly on holidays that sort of focus on our student populations, just giving them history lessons, sometimes leading up to that, but just a moment to know your history, to know why something exists, what it's for, who invented it, and then giving students that information so that they can reflect properly. But I'll start there.
And Amir, I think let's go to you.
Oh, I guess it is. Okay. Can everyone hear me? I don't want to breathe into the mic. I want to So I think, when I think about holidays, there's a lot. I mean, I was a grad student at some point, I was happier then. I had a hairline back then. It's still there, but road tripping was huge, right? So I'm from New York, and so if it was Thanksgiving, it was for Christmas and the winter break, I would drive. I would road trip, take me and my dog, and so holidays are really special and important for me. When I think about holidays here at WSU, I think about Martin Luther King Day, right? And all the events and the celebration that goes into that. And so I'm thankful for the university for putting forth good effort and financial support and monetary dollars to really making sure that people really understand the importance of MLK, his mission and vision, and what are we supposed to do now that obviously he's no longer here. I also think about Black History Month, right? It's important. I think we still get tripped up on the fact that it's just a month. People should do things beyond the month, and I think WSU has done more. They took a more semester approach to doing stuff for Black history, so it does warm my heart. I think about we have switched out Columbus Day for Indigenous Peoples Day, and I was like, thank God. I'm about time. And so I think that's really important for us to even think about the fact that we are on Indigenous land, and what does that really mean to do this work, or to even be a student or to be a professor on land that was what we took, right? And so I think to really honor Indigenous people, tribes, their heritage, their lifeways, the waterways is really important. And I'll say this about Juneteenth, and then I'll be quiet. It's a long time coming, right? And I think about what has had to transpire for us as a state or as a country to say hey, let's talk about Juneteenth. Let's make Juneteenth a holiday. And then when you dig deeper into Juneteenth, it wasn't the day that slavery was over and folks were free. It was 2 years after the fact. And then there's so much history to learn in that Black people were already free, but they still had to wait 2 more years to get their freedom. And I feel like that's so indicative of everything about sometimes being a person of color or a black person in this country, right? Like, you just don't get it until people want to tell you that it is. And so there's just so much about Juneteenth that, you know, I hope that we educate. I hope that we do a lot. I hope that we reflect. You know, for me, it's, you know, obviously just not just another day. It's something that's deeper and really, really important. And, you know, some people say it's anti-American, and I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly. And, you know, I think about, as a teacher educator, I think about our K through 12 students, and, you know, the fact that it's very hard now to talk about racial history now, right? And so how could we have a federal holiday or a national holiday like Juneteenth, but to talk about race and racial history is like, we can't talk about that. It's taboo. But we give you Juneteenth, though. Bye. So that's my spiel for now.
Thank you all for your introductory remarks. I think a theme that I heard through all of your presentations was kind of this idea ultimately of inclusion in our holidays, right? So Juneteenth being an expression of inclusion of Black history in kind of the larger scope of historical events in the nation. Hearing kind of just what we've seen over here in terms of, hey, let's include the people that want to go home for Thanksgiving. I also heard one of you mention the importance of acknowledging Indigenous communities in our holidays. And so I'm wondering if you could reflect on who gets to decide what's a holiday and why, and how does that come to be?
I'll riff it. I mean, that's a great question, right? Because to me, Juneteenth was already a holiday. Like, there's a whole celebration. Like, it's food, it's community. It's like, I can smell Juneteenth, right? So like, it being a federal holiday doesn't change what it means to me. I think, again, as somebody who's from the East Coast, where indigeneity isn't really recognized, like, they were completely run out of this. Like, Virginia is terrible about tribal relations. For the few that are left. So coming out here, I think including that aspect of it, right? Like, Native Month is in November, or AAPI History Month. We celebrate in April, it's in May. Obviously, we're in the midst of Latin Heritage Month, or we're about to kick off Latin Heritage Month. That I did know before getting here. But so just cultures that I otherwise have not been exposed to, and just learning about the commonalities, right, where we intersect, where we have similar histories, and then where we vary, right, and being able to find myself in those stories still, and really being able to connect to my students, right, and the stories that they tell and the family histories that they're sharing. And I think ultimately that holidays are determined by the people who create them. Like, for whatever reason, this day or this moment exists for people to commemorate something or to remember something, and it's about community, it's about family, it's about connection. I think as long as those things are there, it's a holiday. It's nice when it's federally observed or observed by your state, but I think it's what you make it. It's a holiday whether the government says it is or not, for lack of a better word. The government part is just you usually get paid for it, which is very nice as you go out into the real world. But yeah, it's I think the people who make the holiday, right? I think there's a weird hierarchy of like what holidays matter, what holidays are important, right? Like, we talk about Christmas, but there's a lot of other holidays in that same time frame, right? I come from a multi-faith family. I have Jewish family, right? And so Hanukkah's not a high holiday, but it's been given that importance because of the time that it exists. Versus like, we're in the high holidays right now if you're Jewish. So. Yeah, I think it's just really interesting. I think holidays can be marketed, right? Capitalism comes into play, so you can have a sale for everything. Every weekend, every holiday seems to have a sale of some sort at your Macy's or your TJ Maxx or your furniture store. So it's also become commercialized. And so I think money dictates that too. But ultimately, I think at the core, it's the people who want to commemorate and be a community and in remembrance of, right? It's a way to tell a story and a history. And those are the people that determine it. And I think everybody else is jumping on board after.
And Shana Tova to anyone who is celebrating Holy High Days. if Holy High Days is a new term for you, it's going to be a great moment to go and learn about other major holidays and major religions across the world. So if, for example, the term Eid is new for you, that'd be another one to go look for, because in the United States especially, we have a very culturally centric perspective, but we don't necessarily talk about the consciousness of that perspective, in fact, most of the time. And so in posing the question of who gets to decide what's a holiday and whether or not you get that off or not, is a really powerful one when you think about where privilege lies within the United States. So here at WSU, we have a policy that if you observe a holiday for any reason that is not on the official calendar, you should be asking for flexibility from your instructors so that you can go observe that celebration with your family in whatever way that's meaningful for you. So if you didn't know that, make sure that you check that out for your own household. But Amir or Mark, do you have thoughts on who gets to decide what's a recognized holiday and not, and how that plays a role in our history?
I'm not sure. Looking at it through this history, I like your idea of we're the people who decide the holidays and how they're celebrated, because that is very much true on campus. And I think that's partially why, I don't know, we've seen things like I was saying Veterans Day falling off. Memorial Day, I will give an exemption of having fallen off because it's late May. They changed the school calendars in the 80s, so you guys aren't here on Memorial Day anymore. But we've kind of chosen not to pay enough attention to Veterans Day, and I think we as a campus could. I mean, I understand the idea of, hey, I got a day off, I'm going to head out, but do we give you alternatives? Do you give yourselves alternatives? Juneteenth is going to be very much a question along that line. Juneteenth also has the same problem as Memorial Day because, of course, most of the students are gone. But it's going to be driven by what we as a university do and what you guys do that determines how much of a holiday that is and how much it means to us. Both that educational factor. I mean, it hasn't even vaguely, I tried to research it for this because, of course, I'm researching the history of holidays. Over the course of the university, I have 3 mentions of Juneteenth that I ever find, which is someone writes a nice article in the Evergreen in 1995 saying, you should be aware there's this other Independence Day. In about 2006, we tried to, someone over in Moscow had the first annual Juneteenth festival here, and as far as I can tell, there was never a second annual. I don't know, did we not go? I guess technically I wasn't around, I have no memory of this. And then a 1936 mention where someone was going to go to Texas as a representative of the university. They're supposed to be meeting with the governor's wife, and in the Evergreen, she is reported as saying, June 19th, we can't have that. That's the day we give our Negro servants off. It's like, it's the day we give our Negro servants off. And it's not even the day the African Americans celebrate, it's we give it to our Negro servants. And it's just like, and that's it. Those 3 mentions are it for the history of Juneteenth. So we have to build that as a community somehow here. Sorry.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's important because I saw all of you kind of visibly cringe at that quote, right? And the pain of that statement is really important to acknowledge that's part of Washington's history. And so we are not far removed at all. And we are, in fact, still very much in the separation of what racism has divided our society into. And so please keep that in mind, that I think we often look at racism as a historical event, but it's actually very present in all of the decisions that are happening right now. So Amir, do you want to take a riff at who decides holidays?
Not me. I'll say that. I mean, I was going to say something else, but I'll just be I'll be very PC here. And I'll just say not me, the average person, right? So I think it's political, social institutions that really decide that. And I mean, that comes with power and privilege, right? Who are the people that make those decisions and the timing of the decisions? And I think about, okay, if we didn't have let's just say this is the last maybe 20 months and transpired to the way it would we have Juneteenth? And the answer is hell no, or hell to the no, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's the timing to appease people. Let's just say like, well, we're not that racist because, well, we gave you Juneteenth, right? It's like, y'all got MLK, we gave you Barack Obama, you got Juneteenth, so we okay? We good? Bye. Okay. vote Democrat, right? Like, so I just think sometimes that is sometimes the problems when we have these holidays. It's to make the appearance that that racism has subsided, or we're not those people from the 60s or the 20s or the 1860s. And I'm like, nah, I mean, we still kind of are, right? And so I think that's the hardest part, is that sometimes when it comes down to contending with or reflecting on our racial history, we lag behind, and we really fail at that miserably. So, I think my last thing I will say, I just pray and I pray, that we just don't commercialize the shit out of Juneteenth. Because I just feel it in my bones that that's what's coming. And I'm just gonna be like, this was a disappointment, or like, we should have never made this a federal holiday, because you can't really commercialize something like Juneteenth. So if you're thinking about it, don't do it. And if you know people are thinking about it, slap them and tell them, don't do it either. That's my message. Sorry.
We've seen that happen with Pride, right? So
Yes.
Pride has become extremely
Pride is a really good
commercialized
example.
in the last couple of years.
Yes.
So that brings me to kind of the next major observance for students, which is Halloween. At WSU, it's often termed Halloweek. And so it's a time for you all to make decisions, a lot of decisions about how you're going to be in your social environment, how you're going to be in your academic environment. And the thing that we've seen as a mistake year after year is somebody choosing to engage in cultural appropriation during Halloween, right? And I'm seeing a head nod right here, right? So I'm wondering for our panel, if you have any tips or tricks for how to celebrate Halloween, not only kind of in a harm reduction way, but in a way that you can still have a great costume without like definitely harming somebody else's identity.
Don't wear the sombrero. Don't wear the native hair dress. Don't paint your skin darker. Let's see, what else do we have?
Just don't.
Yeah, don't. And yeah, there are plenty of like, I want to say neutral costumes. People can get incredibly creative. Halloween, I've seen some amazing costumes. I can't remember. I saw one the other day. I was like, that's an incredibly, it was filtered and unfiltered. So it happens to be a heterosexual couple. So she had her makeup on and then he had on a wig and they were filtered and unfiltered. Like it just like, but like you can be super creative. There's a world at your fingertips. You have more access to more things than any generation before you. You have a million ways to be creative and not harm others. I know we had an incident, it was like 3 years ago, one of the fraternities, and I think our Native Hawaiian community, and then, it was appropriative, and it sparked a lot of anger and a lot of discourse, and just brought up a lot of sensitivities. And you always just have the option to not to not do that, to just pause and maybe ask yourself, if I put this on, is this going to hurt somebody? Like, or if somebody wore my culture, how would I feel? Maybe that's the better way to do it. But I absolutely think, particularly with like inanimate objects and things of that nature, and there's ways to do it on a budget too, because I know money matters. But yeah, I would just say, like they say, is it Tim Gunn or something? Like when you look in the mirror, take one thing off or something like that. Like look in the mirror before you walk out the door with the costume and maybe ask yourself, like, will someone be offended if I walk out in this? And then, yeah, just make different choices. I don't know. My ultimately, like you said, don't is usually my answer to that, particularly if you're dressing up as a person. And if you're dressing up as a person who's not the same race as you don't have to be the race, right? Like you can do it so that you're not essentially doing black or brown face. So yeah.
There's a really great Instagram account, Low Cost Cosplay. So if you need a couple ideas. Mark or Amir?
I'll just say, just don't. If you have to think like, damn, is this offensive? It's probably offensive. Don't do
There
it.
you go. That's
And please, make sure that you have people in your circle that's going to check you, and then you should also be checking people in your circle. So before they step out, be like, I don't think you should do this. This is probably not the best thing, because you just don't want to be that person. You don't want to get got, right? Halloween's supposed to be a fun event. Make it fun, keep it fun. As Sylvia was saying, if it's someone else from a different race or ethnicity, you don't have to darken your skin or apply makeup. So one example I'll just share. I used to bank at Potlatch Federal Credit Union, and a few years ago, they decided to dress up as a Jamaican bobsled team, and they were in blackface with dreads, and you didn't have to you didn't have to do it. If you just had the Jamaican tracksuit with the dreads, I'm like, the Jamaican bobsled team, cool runnings, I got you. So not only did they do it, the president of Potlatch doubled down and said it was okay. It's not okay. Don't do it. Never do it. It's just bad. And it's 2021. Y'all got YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, Instagram. There's so many accounts that there's so much information. So just don't do it. But more so the fact you don't want to get got because it's on TikTok and all the social medias. Don't be that person. Just don't do it. Just don't. Yeah, that's all I can say.
That's a really good point. Yeah, like, the internet is forever, right? Like, you do that, like, you all have to get jobs afterwards or go to graduate school or things like that. If that is easily accessible, you might not get that job and you might not get into that graduate school. It's happened to people. So, also just for your futures, be really cognizant of that kind of thing. And just be cautious. I'm not saying don't have fun, but just be cautious.
What's the Virginia governor's name?
Oh God, I'm sorry. North.
Yeah, the Virginia governor.
Don't be him.
Yeah, don't be him. So I think it was 70s, 60s that he was in blackface, and I mean he had to contend with it. And then, prime minister? Yes, Justin Trudeau. I mean he did brownface, and he had to explain for it. So I'm like, it comes back. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Mark, any thoughts on this question?
Not really sure what I could add to that. I mean, I like to give most of the people, the benefit of the doubt, and assume that when they're dressing up as a Jamaican bobsled team, they're just not realizing, they're not thinking. And maybe as we're talking here, it's just take 3 minutes, sit down with Google. What might be wrong with my Jamaican bobsled team costume? It will tell you pretty quickly, and you'll go, oh yeah, well maybe I'll do something else. But yeah, I don't know what else I could add to what you guys have said there. I like to think most of you, if you do something offensive, you aren't trying to be offensive, you're just not realizing, and a little digging on something like that isn't hard to do. I like to hope. Go ahead.
I'll just quickly say, even for inanimate objects, so I have a lot of stories because I'm a teacher, right? I teach through people's mistakes. So one year, I believe it was teachers in Idaho, they decided to dress up as, guess what? Judge Trump wall. And I have nothing else to say besides that was just a very poor mistake, because it just is a poor mistake. And thinking about the children that you serve, the reactions that it could, drive, it was just a really poor mistake. So yeah, probably don't be your Trump wall. I don't know. So really, I think as Mark is saying, really think through what you're going to dress up as and just really think it through. That's all.
Professions are usually pretty safe. Like if you want to be a fire person for Halloween, it's probably a pretty safe costume.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to change the gears a little bit and ask you one final question before we go to audience questions, which is, what is one holiday that you wish WSU recognized that we currently don't?
Look at the list of holidays.
And while you're thinking about it, for me, it's really looking at the major holy days for other religions outside of Christianity. So, for example, again, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, which are happening just last week and then this week, or both Eids, which kind of come around Ramadan in the Islamic faith. So just giving faith variety, I think, would be really nice in terms of how we are practicing inclusion as a community. That's what I would put on the list. How about you all?
I'll kind of piggyback off of you. So yes, to the holidays, obviously. One really cool holiday that I don't think we celebrate is a Hindu holiday, Holi, because you get to throw powder on people. It's really great. I think that could be fun. I think we'd have to tread lightly about not being appropriative. But it's a really cool holiday. Like they show it in movies and stuff like that. But that's a legitimate great, fun holiday, and I think it's celebratory, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe something like that would be cool. You can say your birthday.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an answer either. I think you kind of got maybe, in a sense, the one that hits me the most is one that technically we do celebrate in Veterans Day and Memorial Day, but that really we don't. And I hate, as a university archivist, I live in the past. I feel I occasionally spend more time with students who were here in 1914 and 1940 than I do with students who are here in 2021 sometimes. But I've seen how much our people have given over the years, how many have lost their lives, how many have served, and how much we have because of it. It's just like, I don't know, there's something about we need to change the way we remember people. Memorial Day and Veterans Day need to mean more than they do. And I'm not a person who has any military history myself. That's just something I've come to after years of kind of falling in love with these students here, seeing them who were here 100 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. Very serious answer, sorry, but that's mine.
Can I give like a joke, half serious, half not answer? Is that possible? I was gonna say 420, because one, it's my dog's birthday. But also, I mean, it's a thing that, you know, some people, students, faculty, staff partake in, right? It's a thing that people do but don't really talk about. But I also think about the racial history of marijuana, right? And the legalization. I mean, think about how many Black lives have been upended and destroyed because of just having a joint, a Lucy, you know? But now, you know, if you're a white soccer mom and you want to get into cannabis, you sure as hell can, and you could be profitable. Not only can you, but also the federal government's profiting off of marijuana. So I would love to see some type of like focus or conversation. And I mean, if people want to, you know, toke up for the smoke up, that's totally fine. But I would love to see like a deeper conversation about the history, the racial history behind marijuana and its effects on incarceration. So
That'd be a fascinating future public square, especially if you're interested in the history of that. Look into President Nixon's single convention on narcotic drugs, 1967. We really didn't see a full criminalization until the 60s, which most people don't know. So in any case, I think that brings us to audience questions. So this is David from the Center for Civic Engagement, and he's going to come around with a microphone. We do want you to use the mic if you're going to ask a question for our YouTube audience.
yay. Damn, y'all don't love us like that?
We did such a good job.
Not even a question? Not even like a comment?
Yes, you're welcome to make a comment.
I know we touched on a little bit, like celebrating different like holidays and like riding that fine line of cultural appropriation. Like, how do I show like my appreciation for this culture and not appropriate it, like the holidays? Like, I want to celebrate, and I want to like celebrate all cultures, and I want to make sure you guys have a voice, but I also don't want to appropriate. So what's a good way to do that?
And can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, hi, my name is Michaela.
You got it. I believe in you, doctor.
Oh boy, I mean, am I a doctor? I mean, that's what they say. So I think when we talk about cultural appropriation, and so I'll go the long route because I am a professor, right? And I do a lot of stuff in Black aesthetics and like jazz, right? And you know, usually people ask me, well, can white people play jazz? And I'm like, of course white people can play jazz. But the following question is like, do you understand the history of jazz? Do you understand the oppression that people have gone through to play jazz? Who are also your musical influences within jazz, right? And so it's really more about like, yes, you can do this, but I want to know your positionality on this, right? And so how to translate this back into cultural appropriation, I don't need you to be a Kim Kardashian, basically, right? That just goes around, or a Kylie Jenner, you're just going around, you're just taking people's cultures and styles, and you really have no type of clue about the history of what you're taking. And I think that's part and parcel of the problem. People see things as trendy, as cool, but let's just say, if a white woman was to have cornrows, that could be edgy and cool, right? If I myself were to wear cornrows, I'd seen as ghetto and unprofessional, right? And so it's about understanding the histories behind that, the cultural histories as well. And so I think a lot of people can do or partake in a lot of different holidays and activities, but you have to really know the history of these holidays and really actually also just talk to the people that actually participate. And if they allow you to partake, it's cool. And if they don't, sit this one out. It's okay, right? And I think that's really important. So I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, no, I agree. One, I think the fact that you're asking is probably a really good thing, because a lot of people don't. But I think sort of, again, piggybacking off of that, like, if you can partake in the holiday with the people for whom the holiday is for, that's always really good. Like I said last week, I went to dinner for Rosh Hashanah, so I was the only non-Jew there. Well, no, that's not true. It was one Muslim and myself. But like, and just learning, right? Like I said things with the community, but I didn't lead anything. I can cook, but I didn't cook anything because that's not my tradition. And so, yeah, and it was an amazing experience, right? And I learned about, atonement and asking for forgiveness. I went and threw bread in the river, like, it's symbolizing, your apologies and your sins and it being washed away. So like I learned something, right? Like it was a teaching / celebratory time in a high holiday. So something like that where I'm never really in the lead, but I've been invited in and being appreciative and respectful of that. I think is always a good place to start if you're able to do that. And then like Amir said, just understanding the why of a holiday. I thought the jazz reference was really good to like be like a Bruno Mars, maybe like where you're more kind of appreciative of the art form and you definitely partake in it. But giving homage to whoever is at the forefront of that is probably the safest bet. And then educate, pass that education forward that you get.
I think starting with asking the question is actually a really excellent place to begin because it shows that you have some consciousness that there might be a question that you do need to ask. So I think that's a good place to start. For everyone, I always recommend that we move from a frame of cultural humility. And cultural humility is a framework that comes out of nursing literature. It's from the mid-90s actually, but it's a kind of a paradigm shift from the term that we've always heard, which is cultural competency. And cultural competency is a term that comes from quite a bit of hubris because it makes an assumption that we can be competent in everybody else's cultural frameworks, which is just simply not possible with, multi-billions of people on planet Earth. So from a cultural humility frame, what we're doing is working from this idea that I don't know everything about the way someone else is in the world, and I'm taking it upon myself to do my own learning and my own education without putting the burden of that education on the person who I'm trying to learn about. And so I always recommend that people start with reading or YouTube videos, or actually Teen Vogue did a really great piece on My Culture is Not a Costume the year before last. So if that's a website that you've ever visited before, Teen Vogue has completely overhauled its image in the last probably 5 or 6 years. It's actually a pretty great series to start from if you're asking that question for you. But cultural humility is a place that I think we can all benefit from starting from, which is, again, asking yourself, what do I not know? How can I learn? And how can I do that without burdening someone else? I really appreciate the comment of being invited into a space. That's a really wonderful way to ensure that you are practicing cultural appreciation versus cultural appropriation. But if you're not invited, that's also okay. No one is obligated to invite you to participate in their community either. But we want to share, right? We want to share. We want to be appreciative of what each other are bringing to the table and understand different ways of being in the world. And ultimately, holidays come down to celebration. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to celebrate something or someone or honor somebody in a way that is meaningful to the originators of that idea. So I think that's where we'll leave that. I think we have time for one more audience comment or question. Everybody all at once now.
If no one asks another question, I won't be able to keep my job. So if you could just...
All right, well, I will move towards, if any of our audience members would like to reach you after we end the public square today, how can they find you on campus?
Well, I'm in this building on the very top floor, in room 409. Please don't all come at once. I also haven't cleaned my office yet. I just moved. So it's a mess. But you can always email me. It's my first name dot my last name, so Sylvia.Bullock, and the good old WSU system. But yeah, if you come to the fourth floor, someone will find me or leave me a message when I get back from the 8th meeting of the day. To keep me busy. But yeah, I'm always willing to chat and help when I can. So yeah.
Sure, I'll jump in. University archives are located over in Terrell Library. Basically, you go down to the floor of that lovely atrium, and we're right there on the right, Manuscripts, Archives, Special Collections. Much like you want to come in and talk about any element of the university history, I'm all over it and happy to help anyone who wants to explore.
I'm in Cleveland Hall, that building that most people avoid. Cleveland Hall, 334. Always here to chop it up. Please, if reach out, email me. Please not hit me up on Teams. I hate Teams. It's like a glorified Facebook Messenger. Just don't do it. Email me, please. Thank you. I hate Teams.
I have to use it for my students.
It's awful.
Strong feelings about teams up in here. All right. And again, I'm Jill Creighton. I'm your Dean of Students. You can find me Dean of Students at wsu.edu. On email, you can always at me on Twitter at Jill Creighton. And then also for our amazing colleagues in the Center for Civic Engagement. Center for Civic Engagement is our host of the Public Square events. You can always find them on GivePulse, so please make sure you check that out. And of course, all of your involvement opportunities are also on Presence. So thank you all for attending. For all of you in YouTube land, thank you so much for staying with us. And I wish you all a safe and happy rest of your week. Thanks. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.